front bench move round. Right, we now come to the statement. I call the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At my order overnight, the RAF engaged in a second wave of strikes against Houthi military targets in Yemen. We did so because we continue to see, including in intelligence, an ongoing and imminent threat from the Houthis to UK commercial and military vessels and to those of our partners in the Red Sea and wider region. I told the House last week that we would not hesitate to respond if the acts continue in order to protect innocent lives and preserve the freedom of navigation. And that is what we have done. We acted alongside the United States with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada and the Netherlands. We acted on the same basis as the 11th of January, fully in line with international law, in self-defence and in response to a persistent threat. And as with the first wave, the strikes were limited to carefully selected targets with maximum care taken to protect civilian lives. Mr. Speaker, attempting to counter every Houthi attack after it has been launched is simply not sustainable. We have already shot down dozens of missiles and drones targeted at civilian vessels and at the Royal Navy. And the Houthis have conducted at least 12 further attacks on shipping since the 11th of January, including just last night, shortly before our strikes were conducted. So we acted to further degrade their ability to mount such attacks. Last week, I gave the House our initial assessment of the first wave of strikes. Since then, we have seen further evidence that they were successful in degrading the Houthis' military capability. Last night, we hit 2 military sites just north of Sunak, each containing multiple specific targets, which the Houthis used to support their attacks on shipping. And Mr. Speaker, I want to be very clear. We are not seeking a confrontation. We urge the Houthis and those who enable them to stop these illegal and unacceptable attacks. But if necessary, the United Kingdom will not hesitate to respond again in self-defence. We cannot stand by and allow these attacks to go unchallenged. Inaction is also a choice. With that in mind, Mr. Speaker, and given the persistent nature of the threat, it was important to update to the House again today. I listened carefully to honourable and right honourable members last week, and so we will give the House a chance for a full debate on our broader approach in the Red Sea tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, we took extensive steps to address this threat to international security before taking military action. We launched Operation Prosperity Guardian in December with over 20 other countries. The international community issued repeated statements on the 1st of December, the 19th of December, the 3rd of January, the 12th of January, condemning the attacks and urging the Houthis to desist. On the 10th of January, the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution demanding that they stop the attacks. And I think it is important to note also that the internationally recognised government of Yemen has also condemned the Houthis for their actions, accusing them of creating a conflict for propaganda, serving only their own selfish ends. Mr. Speaker, as we saw in the House last week, members are rightly keen to hear how this situation could be brought to an end. The answer must include the vital right to self-defence when we're attacked. But that is only one part of our wider response, which I want to say more about today. First, we are increasing our diplomatic engagement because we recognise the deep concerns about and the complexities of the current situation. I spoke to President Biden about these issues last night. The Foreign Secretary will be in the region in the coming days, and he met his Iranian counterpart last week. He made clear that they must cease supplying the Houthis with weapons and intelligence and use their influence to stop Houthi attacks. Second, we must end the illegal flow of arms to the Houthi militia. We have intercepted weapon shipments in the region before, including components of the very missiles used by the Houthis today. This brings home the importance of maritime security in the region, and that includes working closely with our allies and partners to disrupt and deter the supply of weapons and components. Third, we are going to use the most effective means at our disposal to cut off the Houthis' financial resources where they are used to fund these attacks. We are working closely with the United States on this, and plan to announce new sanction measures in the coming days. Fourth, we need to keep helping the people of Yemen, who have suffered so terribly as a result of the country's civil war. We will continue to deliver humanitarian aid and support a negotiated peace in that conflict, not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because we need to show the people of Yemen that we have no quarrel with them, as the Yemeni government itself understands. So, Mr. Speaker, this is our strategy, and we will keep all other tools under close review as well. Mr. Speaker, I repeat that there is no link between our actions of self-defence in the Red Sea and the situation in Israel and Gaza. Those who make that link do the Houthis work for them. And I want to be clear that those here at home who glorify the Houthis' attacks are glorifying terrorism, plain and simple. They will be met with a zero-tolerance approach. Now, all of that said, Mr. Speaker, I would like to address the situation in Israel and Gaza directly because it remains at the forefront of members' minds. President Biden and I again discussed this yesterday, and he shares my deep concerns about the situation, about the terrible suffering and loss of civilian lives. So together we are working to establish a new aid route through the port of Ashdod. And Mr. Speaker, the UK wants to see an end to the fighting in Gaza as soon as possible. We are calling for an immediate humanitarian pause to get aid in and hostages out as a vital step towards building a sustainable, permanent ceasefire without a return to destruction, fighting and loss of life. But to achieve that, Hamas must agree to the release of all hostages. They can no longer be in charge of Gaza. The threat from Hamas terror and rocket attacks must end, and an agreement must be in place for the Palestinian Authority to return to Gaza to provide governance services and security. That is the pathway to peace that should unite the whole House. And I believe we are also united in support of a two-state solution. Mr. Speaker, through all the complexity of the current situation, our principles hold firm. Resolute in the face of threats, compassionate in support of those in need, and determined in maintaining stability, security, and the rule of law. That is what our allies and partners have come to expect from the United Kingdom. That is what we stand for, and I commend this statement to the House.
I now call the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Prime Minister for advance copy of his statement. Labour said we will judge further action on the Houthis on a case-by-case basis. So let me be clear, we back this targeted action to reinforce maritime security in the Red Sea. The Houthi attacks must stop. They are designed to destabilise us, so we must stand united and strong. They bring danger to ordinary civilians working hard at sea, so we must protect them. And they aim to disrupt the flow of goods, food and medicines, so we must not let them go unaddressed. The professionalism and bravery of those serving on HMS Diamond and flying RAF Typhoons are both totally accepted and completely remarkable. Without them, Britain cannot be a force for good in the world. Mr. Speaker, these are, of course, the second set of strikes that the UK has participated in, and the stated aim of the first set was to deter and degrade Houthi capability. But we now know that their attacks have continued. So while we do not question the justification for action, it is right that the House hears more about their effectiveness. Labour, of course, recognises that strikes can be used to reduce threat without eliminating it, and we recognise that the military action taken is just one component of a wider diplomatic strategy. But nonetheless, I would ask the Prime Minister to set out his confidence that these strikes will be effective in reducing Houthi capabilities. And while, of course, we understand the clear legal basis for these actions, as the situation has evolved, can the Prime Minister now commit to restating and republishing the government's legal position? Mr. Speaker, alongside the UK and the US, other countries have provided non-operational support for these strikes and maritime protection in the Red Sea. Many more support the United Nations Security Council resolution that utterly condemns the Houthi attacks. So can I ask the Prime Minister what work is being done to hold together that coalition and to, if possible, enlarge that coalition? The action the UK takes must draw on the support of all those who care about international law. And given the special role the UK plays in Yemen, can he set out the concrete steps, in addition to those in his statement, that we are taking to help the people of Yemen who have suffered terribly as a result of that country's civil war? Because, Mr. Speaker, the international community cannot allow itself to be divided. That is exactly what the Houthi backers in Tehran would love to see. And on that note, can he also update the House on whether his government has given further consideration to the prescription of the IRGC? We do need every tool at our disposal to disrupt IRGC activities, and we must show Iran that it cannot pursue its ends by destabilising the entire region. Because, like the Prime Minister, I totally reject the Houthi claims that attacking ships from around the world is somehow linked to the conflict in Gaza. These attacks do absolutely nothing for the Palestinian people. What is needed in Gaza is a humanitarian truce now, a sustainable ceasefire to stop the killing of innocent civilians, the space for the return of all the hostages, urgent humanitarian relief, and a decisive step towards a two-state solution. Because, Mr. Speaker, Palestinian statehood is the inalienable right of the Palestinian people. It is not in the gift of a neighbour. So does he agree with me that a secure Israel, alongside a viable Palestinian state, is the only path to a just and lasting peace? Because, Mr. Speaker, we must stop those who sow division. We must do what we can to disrupt and deter Houthis. And we must stay united and steadfast in defence of our values, our security and our right to self-defence. Labour will always act in the national interest, and we provide our full support for these necessary and proportionate strikes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Well, can I thank the Leader of the Opposition?